In September of 2023, a French billionaire who made his fortune in luxury handbags and fashion houses agreed to pay roughly $7 billion for a company that owns no factories, holds no patents, and doesn't actually own the thing everyone assumes it owns. The company was Creative Artists Agency, and what François-Henri Pinault was buying wasn't Tom Cruise or Meryl Streep or any of the roughly 2,000 entertainers and athletes CAA represents. None of them were for sale. None of them were his to buy. Every one of those clients could, in theory, walk out the door the next morning, sign with a rival across town, and owe CAA nothing. So what did he actually buy? That question sounds like a technicality. It isn't. It's the entire business, and if you don't understand the answer, you don't understand why this industry keeps generating some of the strangest, most lopsided valuations in modern finance.
Most people assume a talent agency works the way a sports team works. The team owns the roster is under contract, the contract is the asset, and the asset is what gets bought and sold. Private equity firms buy sports leagues on exactly that logic. You're buying enforceable claims on players, media rights, and revenue streams that don't disappear just because someone gets annoyed on a Tuesday. A talent agency doesn't work like that. There is no long-term binding contract chaining a movie star to CAA or to WME or to UTA. What exists instead is something much thinner. An agent picks up the phone, negotiates a deal, takes 10%, and hopes the client picks up the phone again next time. That's it. That's the foundation underneath a company that just sold for $7 billion.
Which means the real question isn't what Pinault bought. It's why anyone would pay that much for something this easy to lose. And why, if you look at the last 15 years of deals in this space, more sophisticated capital keeps lining up to buy in anyway. Start with the numbers, because they tell you something the headlines skip past. TPG, the private equity firm that had controlled CAA since taking a majority stake in 2014, first bought into the company back in 2010 at a valuation of around $1.1 billion. By the time TPG sold out to Pinault's investment vehicle Artemis in 2023, the same company was valued at roughly $7 billion. Over 13 years, the value of the business grew something like six-fold. Without CAA building a single factory, launching a hard product line, or acquiring anything that would show up as a traditional asset on a balance sheet. Something was generating that growth. It wasn't the specific roster, because the roster of any given year isn't the roster 5 years later. Stars fade, new ones emerge, agents move between firms, sometimes taking entire client lists with them. If the asset being valued were simply famous people, the business should be exactly as unstable as fame itself. It isn't. So the value has to live somewhere else. It lives in the relationship between the agent and the client, and more precisely, in the machinery an agency builds around that relationship to make staying more valuable than leaving. Here's the mechanism, and it's worth being specific because this is the part almost nobody outside the industry actually understands. An agent's leverage with a client isn't the relationship alone. It's the infrastructure wrapped around it, legal teams that can structure a 9-figure franchise deal, a business affairs department fluent in every studio's negotiating patterns, a publicity apparatus and a packaging pipeline that can turn one client into 3 or 4 separate revenue streams instead of one. A single agent working alone can still make calls and close deals. What they can't easily do is replicate that machine. Building it from scratch is expensive, slow, and usually has to happen while every former colleague at the old firm is actively trying to poach the same clients you just walked away with. Put a rough number on it, just to see the shape of the thing. Imagine a single A-list client earning $20 million in a year across film, endorsements, and producing credits. At a standard 10% commission, that's $2 million flowing to the agency from one relationship. Against that, the agency might be running a small team around that client, an agent, a co-agent, assistants, business affairs support, costing a fraction of that $2 million to maintain.
This is illustrative, not a disclosed figure any agency publishes, but it shows the shape of the incentive. A handful of top clients can generate outsized commission relative to the cost of servicing them, which is exactly why losing even one or two of them to a rival isn't a rounding error. It's a direct hit to the top of the firm's most profitable relationships.
That's the golden handcuff, and it operates on both sides at once. The client doesn't stay because of a contract. There mostly isn't one worth the name. The client stays because leaving the agent often means losing access to the machine, at least temporarily. The agent doesn't leave because starting over means rebuilding that machine from nothing. When a private equity firm buys a talent agency, this is what they're actually purchasing: control of the system that makes staying the rational choice for hundreds of agents across thousands of individual relationships simultaneously. The commission itself is almost a rounding error next to what the industry eventually figured out how to do with something called packaging. Packaging worked like this. Instead of placing an actor, a writer, and a director into a show and collecting commission from each of them separately, an agency would assemble the entire package, cast, writers, sometimes the format itself, and hand the whole bundle to a studio. In exchange, the agency collected a fee directly from the studio, stacked on top of whatever it already earned from its individual clients. According to the Writers Guild of America's own 2019 accounting, this practice helped channel an estimated $3 billion of outside investment into the two biggest firms, WME and CAA, over the following decade. It also created a structural conflict nobody could ignore forever. The agency representing a writer and the agency with a direct financial stake in how cheaply that writer's show got made for the studio were the same company. That's not a hypothetical concern. That's packaging by design. In 2019, the Writers Guild of America did something no client group in Hollywood had really done before at scale. Its members collectively terminated their agencies over packaging fees, arguing the practice put agency profits directly at odds with writer pay. Thousands of writers fired their representation in a coordinated act. The dispute dragged on for months before the agencies negotiated new franchise agreements that restructured how packaging fees worked. The practice was reshaped, not erased outright. But the episode proved something the industry had quietly assumed was impossible. Clients could act as a block. The machine could be challenged from outside, not just picked apart one client at a time by a rival agency.
Sit with that, because it's the exact same fragility the video opened with, just arriving from a different direction. If enough clients decide staying isn't worth it anymore, the leverage doesn't just weaken, it can be forced into renegotiating the terms of its own existence. And here's where the story loops back on itself in a way that should make you suspicious of how permanent any of this really is. CAA, the company Pinot paid $7 billion for, exists in the first place because of exactly this kind of departure. In 1975, 5 agents left the William Morris Agency, then the dominant force in Hollywood representation, and started a competitor with nothing but their own client relationships and their own nerve. Within a generation, the firm they built from nothing had eclipsed the one they walked away from. Decades later, that same instinct repeated itself when William Morris and a firm called Endeavor merged in 2009 to form WME, consolidating specifically against the kind of insurgent threat CAA had once represented.
So the fragility isn't a bug sitting inside this business model. It's the model's origin story, replayed twice at industry-shaping scale. Every acquisition since has effectively been an attempt to buy enough structural advantage that this kind of defection can't happen on the new owner's watch, or at least can't happen cheaply. That race for structural advantage is exactly what's been driving the consolidation reshaping this industry in just the past few years. In 2022, CAA absorbed ICM Partners outright. One of the historic Big Four agencies folded entirely into a competitor, leaving the market with 3 dominant firms instead of 4. UTA, suddenly the smallest of the 3 survivors, took on its own private equity investment around the same window, specifically to avoid falling further behind. Because in a business built on packaging leverage, being the smallest player in a 3-way market is a genuinely dangerous place to sit.
Bigger rosters mean better packaging terms with studios. Better terms mean more cash available to retain agents. More retained agents mean fewer defections. It's the same golden handcuff mechanism from earlier, just now operating one level up. Entire firms competing for dominance instead of individual agents competing for individual clients. And that scale logic is exactly what explains why sophisticated capital keeps pouring into a business this structurally unstable instead of running from it.
Look at what the buyers have actually done with their money once the deal closed. Silver Lake didn't just acquire WME's parent company Endeavor and leave it as a talent agency generating commission checks. Under Silver Lake's ownership, Endeavor built out ownership stakes in the UFC and WWE, eventually spinning them into a separate publicly traded company called TKO Group. In 2024, Silver Lake announced a deal to take the remaining Endeavor business private at $27.50 a share in a transaction ultimately valuing the combined business, including the TKO stake, at somewhere around $25 billion. WME's talent agency became one piece of a much larger portfolio spanning live sports, media rights, and event production, assets that don't evaporate the moment a single star agent leaves for a rival across town. CAA has followed a nearly identical logic under Pinault's Artemis. Beyond representing actors and athletes, the firm has expanded into sports marketing and brand consulting, and as of 2026, a joint venture with its former owner TPG called Compound Creative Holdings, a roughly $250 million vehicle built specifically to acquire and grow businesses run by online creators. None of that requires keeping any particular movie star happy indefinitely. It's a direct hedge against the exact fragility the original acquisition was exposed to. That's the real playbook, and it explains a fact sitting right inside Endeavor's own public filings from its brief run as a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. In 2024, the WME Group's parent reported revenue of roughly $7 billion and still posted a net loss of several $100 million. A company generating that much top-line revenue while losing money isn't automatically a warning sign in this industry. Often, it means the business is spending aggressively to build the diversified, less fragile version of itself, the version that isn't just a bet on which specific agents show up to work on Monday morning. So if you actually wanted to buy a top-tier talent agency today, here's what the process would genuinely involve. You wouldn't be negotiating for a client list, because client lists aren't contractual assets you can pin down in a data room. What due diligence actually means in this business is closer to relationship mapping, understanding which top agents hold which client relationships, how likely each of those agents is to stay through a change of ownership, and what it would cost in guaranteed compensation to keep them there for the years it takes to prove the deal was worth doing. You'd be underwriting people, not property. And you'd be pricing in, deal by deal, the same fragility that's been sitting underneath this entire industry since 5 agents walked out of one building in 1975. You would not be buying a roster, because rosters walk. You would not be buying enforceable long-term contracts, because those barely exist at the top of this market in any meaningful sense. You would be buying a retention system, the legal infrastructure, the packaging pipeline, the brand gravity that makes staying feel safer than leaving, and increasingly, an entire secondary business built out of sports leagues, media assets, and creator economy ventures designed so that no single defection and no single client revolt can take the whole thing down at once. And you would be paying a steep premium for how well that system currently holds, fully aware that this same industry's own founding legend is a story about exactly how and why it can fail. The business works as long as staying is worth more than leaving. Every dollar Silver Lake, TPG, and Artemis have spent across this industry has gone toward keeping that equation true for as many agents and as many clients as possible, not toward owning the roster that made the equation matter in the first place. The roster was never really for sale. The equation always was.